Chris Ash's defense is about to be put to the test once again. We have got a new quarterback debate that is very different from the one we had all offseason, and the Notre Dame running backs might just be the key to turning things around. We're covering all that and more on today's mailbag.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up? Welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. Today is Friday, September 26th. So happy Friday, everybody. And thank you for getting your game weekend started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. And before we dive in, I want to remind you to please subscribe on YouTube or follow along wherever you are listening to the podcast. I also wanted to thank everyone who submitted their mailbag questions this week, because today's episode is absolutely packed. We're going to dig into the state of Chris Ash's defense and whether Marcus Freeman has a solution. Then we'll switch it over to the offense and debate CJ Carr versus Arch Manning and how Mike Denbrock can get Jaden Greathouse more involved in the offense. And finally, we'll wrap things up with some big picture talk from playoff odds to which position group is primed to break out this week. So let's dive right in. This first question comes from @MitchMattIrish. How much of the defensive problems do you think stems from the staff's overconfidence in the defensive line? Is it possible that the offensive line just wasn't as good as we thought during camp, which got the coaching staff overly confident in the D-line's ability to get to the quarterback, resulting in this rigid approach of trying to get pressure with just four? I think it's safe to say that that was part of the problem, especially going up against Miami. Based on the game plan, it's pretty clear that the staff thought that they could win with four-man rushes, and it just didn't work out. That is one of the great mysteries about this team, right? Because obviously the defense hasn't been playing anywhere near the level that we expected. And if you remember, throughout camp, whenever the coaches had an opportunity to speak to the media, they were pretty open about the fact that the defense was ahead of the offense. As a matter of fact, they were way ahead of the offense at certain points, which makes the first three games so confusing. Like, how could this defense that we have seen so far stop this Notre Dame offense that has been absolutely clicking lately? It's just a really interesting dilemma that Notre Dame finds itself in. However, the fact that this defense did look good in camp is like the last bit of hope that I'm clinging to, that they can turn things around. And Marcus Freeman has even said, like, the defensive line specifically has not playing with the same aggression, the same intensity, the same velocity, I think is the exact word that he used, like he saw in camp. But things can change. And the offensive line has improved week to week. They did not look good against Miami. They kind of got whipped in that game. As a matter of fact, they didn't kind of get whipped. They did get whipped against Miami and Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor. But they got better the following week against Texas A&M, and they got even better against Purdue. I expect another big jump from that group going into this week. As for the defensive line, I think they severely miss Howard Cross and Riley Mills, probably even more so than they expected. Those two disrupted everything on the interior, and it forced opposing offenses to use three guys, the center and the two guards, to block two of them, which then left the defensive ends in more one-on-one opportunities, and they were able to take advantage of it. So far, the defensive tackles have been a big disappointment. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise, because throughout the offseason, I said this is the biggest question mark, but then Marcus Freeman came out, and he expressed a lot of confidence in those guys, and up to this point, they just have not really proven him right. Again, there's still time. They're only entering their fourth game of the season, but clearly this defensive line is not as good as they thought, and they're going to have to adjust, which I'm hoping will lead to some more aggressive blitzing from Chris Ash and Marcus Freeman, because that was a staple of the Al Golden defense. And even though they've run the coverages about the same, which is a kind of a common misconception, they've basically been going man coverage the same amount as they did under Al Golden. The biggest difference in terms of scheme between Chris Ash and Al Golden has been the fact that Chris Ash just doesn't want to blitz a whole lot. I think that's going to change against Arkansas. It's probably not going to be a full all-out blitz every single time, because you got to account for Taylon Green's running ability, but I do expect to see a more aggressive defense in this game. Our next question comes from @YaruRL. Can you confirm who was calling plays on defense in the second half against Purdue? It looked like a completely different defense in the first half. Okay, so I know this is a popular rumor going around message boards and social media. I don't know where this came from, and to be honest, I don't think there is any truth to it. I think it was just Chris Ash calling the plays, and the Notre Dame defense played better in the second half. It definitely wasn't Marcus Freeman, because he wasn't holding on to a play sheet. If he were actively calling the plays on the defense, the broadcast absolutely would have caught that. They didn't, and I don't think it was Mike Mickens either. Was it more collaborative? Possibly. It did seem like Freeman, Ash, Mickens, and the entire defensive staff that are on the sidelines were communicating a lot more in huddles during the game, but if someone else was calling plays in the second half, then Marcus Freeman probably would not have defended the play calling as much as he did in his press conference on Monday. And to the point that it looked completely different in the second half compared to the first, that's true if you're looking at the true halftime and beyond that. But think about this. They had a 2-hour-long rain delay that was technically still in the first half, right? If Marcus were to make a change at defensive play caller, he would have done it during the delay. And when Purdue got the ball back after the delay, they had great field position. Then they kicked a field goal. Then Jadarian Price ran the kickoff return for a touchdown. And then they got the ball back with under a minute left. They went 75 yards in 6 plays and scored a touchdown. Didn't burn a single timeout. That looked like the Chris Ash defense we have seen a lot this season. So it means that Marcus didn't make a change during that delay. It was Chris Ash calling the plays, and Marcus just looked completely despondent after that. He just put his head down and was so frustrated. Now, to the defense's credit, they turned things around when it was the true second half, but the difference is by the time that the defense took the field in the second half, they were already up by 19 points because when Notre Dame got the ball to start that half, they went right down the field. Jeremiyah Love had that really, really impressive 46-yard touchdown run. So the circumstances were a lot different at that point. When you're down 19, your playbook kind of narrows down. You know they're going to be passing it every single time. The running game is not a threat at all in that scenario. So the defense did play better. And also, it helps to have Adon Schuler, one of the best defensive players in the team, captain, all that stuff. He was back out there in the second half because his suspension, I guess you could call it, from his targeting penalty against Texas A&M had been served. So there's a multitude of factors. Adon Schuler, the lead, all of that stuff. But I do fully think it was Chris Ash calling the plays throughout the second half of that Purdue game. All right, next up, @QuinnCrudson9992. How can Marcus Freeman slide in Mike Mickens to get some play calling experience this season so that he is prepared to possibly take over as defensive coordinator next season, while at the same time avoiding avoiding division in the locker room and within the staff, and also trying to win some effing games? Okay, intense question coming from our guy Quinn here. Look, this is another question I get asked a lot. When is Marcus Freeman going to change play callers? Why hasn't he given it to Mike Mickens? I just don't think it's possible to demote Ash and hand the play calling duties over to Mike Mickens without firing Ash. And as we have said multiple times on this show, I understand everyone's frustrations with Chris Ash, and I don't know how long he's going to be around at Notre Dame, but everyone should be rooting for Chris Ash to turn things around, because if he turns things around, this team is going to get a lot better. Even the fans who hate Chris Ash and want him fired yesterday should be rooting for him to have success this week and going forward, because if this defense can just be above average, this team can be really, really good, because that offense is something special. Like, they're never going to have an elite defense this season, but if they can just be above average, that should be more than enough with the rest of this schedule for Notre Dame, so long as they don't have any more, decimating injuries. It's not looking great for Leonard Moore this Saturday, so they've already been bitten by the injury bug to an extent, but not to the extent that they got bit last year. But I don't really see a scenario here where Mike Mickens is just going to come in and save the day in the middle of the season, right? Like, I'm sure Mike Mickens has some say, because in addition to being the defensive backs coach at Notre Dame, he is also the defensive pass game coordinator. I feel like that aspect of his job is more important during the week leading up to the game. He's going to have a lot of say in the game plan and things like that. But when it comes to making calls during the actual game, it's going to be on the defensive coordinator. Now, if things go from bad to worse, Notre Dame drops this game to Arkansas, they give up a ton of points, and then they end up losing another game, and they give up another, a ton of points in that game as well, then maybe in that scenario, Marcus Freeman will have no other choice but to fire Chris Ash midseason. But again, we don't want that, because that means more losses on the schedule. The goal right now for Notre Dame should be to help Chris Ash and do everything they can to fix things on that side of the ball. If it works out, great. This team has a lot of potential, and if they figure it out, things could end up going really well for this team down the road. And if it doesn't work, if they exhaust all other options and they have to let Chris Ash go in the middle of the season, then yeah, at that point, you can give Mike Mickens the play calling duties, see what he's got, see how he does in that situation, and then make a decision once the season is officially over. All right, one more question about the defense here. This one comes from @TateConti6311. Is Christian Gray fit to play outside? He seems to lock down any route under 20 yards, but gets burnt on a go route 60% of the time. He's definitely not going to play nickel. He doesn't have the body type to do that. I don't think his game is really suited to play nickel. So if he's going to play, it's going to be on the outside. And look, Gray's struggles this year have been a major issue. Got burned a couple times against Miami, had that big pass interference penalty that set up their game-winning field goal. Got burnt several times against Texas A&M, had a really poor tackle attempt on that 86-yard touchdown play by Mario Craver. But it is clear that he's playing through some pain. He suffered that injury against Miami. It looked like it could be a season ender, but he's been gutting it out. Salute to him for doing that, but he's just not been the same player this season. I thought he played better against Purdue when he was filling in for Leonard Moore at the boundary, but part of that might have to do with the fact that teams weren't targeting him nearly as much as they do when it's him and Leonard Moore out there because they were targeting Mark Zachary instead. He could play on the boundary again this week because, like I said earlier, I don't expect Leonard Moore to be able to go. He was listed as questionable on Thursday's injury report. The good news, though, is that Devontae Smith was listed as probable, so that should help things out a little bit. If that is the case, if Devontae Smith is able to go in this game, I think what Notre Dame should do is let Devontae Smith start at nickel, obviously, and then keep Christian Gray at his natural position covering in the field, and then you could have Dallas Golden start at the boundary. Because even though Dallas Golden started at nickel last week against Purdue, Marcus Freeman even said in his press conference that Dallas Golden did not really get any reps at nickel until Monday of the week leading up to Purdue. He has been training at boundary since he got here in the summer, throughout camp and all that stuff. So if Leonard Moore is not able to go, I think you put in Dallas Golden there to replace him and let Christian Gray work in his spot because up to this point, Mark Zachary has shown he's just not ready yet for this moment. That's not to say he's a miss. I think he could end up being a really talented player for Notre Dame, but we have to be honest. We've been a little bit spoiled in terms of how impactful some of Notre Dame's true freshman cornerbacks have been. Like, it's very rare that you get a guy as good as Benjamin Morrison as a true freshman, and then for him to be replaced by Leonard Moore as a true freshman, who looks like another all-time great. Like, we were probably due for just an average freshman cornerback. But I don't know. That's just an idea. And going back to the original question, Gray definitely needs to get better at defending the deep ball, but he is the best option they have right now. We have seen him make great plays in the past. Hopefully that interception he got against Purdue will have him feel more confident going forward. But as long as Leonard Moore is out, they're going to really lean on Christian Gray. And I do think he's got it in him. He can be a really great player. He's just got to develop some confidence and just stay mentally strong throughout the game because it's a very difficult position. He's going to get beat sometimes, but he's also a really good player who's going to make some great plays in a Notre Dame uniform once again. All right, now it's time to turn the page and let's talk about the Notre Dame offense. Coming up next, we're going to break down who is the better running back between Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price. Then we're going to talk about CJ Carr versus Arch Manning and how Notre Dame can unlock Jaden Greathouse. Stay with us. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is Jadarian Price's kickoff return for a touchdown against Purdue. Even though the Irish offense had no trouble moving the ball all day, the team needed a spark after the long rain delay, and Jadarian Price delivered. Not to mention the fact that Price had 3 rushing touchdowns on top of that kickoff return as the Irish ran away from the Purdue Boilermakers 56-30. That's what keeps fans and players alike moving forward, always chasing the next great moment. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we got a few questions about the Notre Dame offense, and this first one comes from Dan Brockman, who asks, there's no question Jeremiyah Love is elite and a better athlete, but do you think Jadarian Price is a better running back? He runs with an unrelenting force and has sneaky speed. I've actually seen this question come up a few more times beyond this mailbag question. Like at first, I was like, no, Jadarian Price is not a better running back than Jeremiyah Love, but you have to give Price credit. He has developed his game a lot. He has become a lot better all-around running back this year compared to years past. But no, I still think Jeremiyah Love is definitely the better running back compared to Jadarian Price. I think Love is the best running back in all of college football. I think he's going to be a top 15 NFL draft pick, and I just think so highly of Jeremiyah Love. That's not to diminish Jadarian Price at all. He has looked really good this year. He's extremely explosive. But in terms of all-around back, Jeremiyah Love is clearly better. Love is definitely better at running between the tackles. He's definitely better in pass protection. He's also better at catching passes out of the backfield. Now, could you make the case that Jadarian Price is better at getting to the outside and stretching the ball out and getting some big chunk plays? You could make a case for that, but based on what we have seen so far, the main thing that Price has improved upon is he's not getting happy feet at the line of scrimmage anymore. That was a big issue for him last year, and that led to a lot of stuffs. Love rarely does that. It's very rare when you see Jeremiyah Love get blown back after getting the handoff because he's had happy feet, right? If Jeremiyah Love is getting tackled in the backfield, usually it's because one or multiple guys missed a block and he was getting tackled from the moment that he touched the ball. Jeremiyah Love runs with such violence through the middle of the hole. Like, that is something that I did not expect coming out of high school. That was one thing when I looked at him where I was like, man, he tries to take everything to the outside. He kind of looks like a wide receiver build. Like, he was very skinny. He wasn't even 200 pounds when he started playing college football, but he's put on a lot of weight, a lot of good weight. He's much stronger, and he just runs with such intensity through the tackles. And Jadarian Price has gotten better at that, for sure. We've seen it already this year, but Jeremiyah Love has done it many more times. He's proven it far more so than Jadarian Price in that respect. But these guys complement each other so well. So even though I think Jeremiyah Love is the better all-around running back, I think what Jadarian Price brings to the table and the fact that they can switch back and forth between those guys. Like, that one drive was so perfect when they kept handing the ball off to Jeremiyah Love, and he basically got them all the way down to the 21-yard line, and then Jadarian Price came in and then scored on his first carry. Like, that's not as easy for Jadarian Price if Jeremiyah Love doesn't lay the groundwork throughout that drive, just getting 6 yards and 7 yards and 4 yards, just consistently moving the ball forward. Then Jadarian Price comes in with fresh legs and he gets the touchdown. Just because he scored the touchdown does not make him the better overall back, but I think the way that Price has been playing this year, he is going to end up getting drafted pretty high in this upcoming NFL draft. Like I said earlier this week when Luke was on the show, I'm still holding out some hope that he'll come back next year if Notre Dame just drops the bag and says, hey, you're going to be RB1. It's possible, but it's unlikely when you consider just how well he's been playing as of late. All right, next one. At Nathan Litwiller, is CJ Carr better than Arch Manning, or would you rather have Arch lead the offense? I mean, based on what we have seen this season, I don't know how you can possibly say that Arch Manning is better. And that is not something I would have said going into the season. As a matter of fact, I predicted that Notre Dame would lose to Texas in the college football playoff semifinal games. And the main reason being was because I thought Arch Manning would win the quarterback battle over CJ Carr. Clearly, I was putting too much stock in the limited action I had seen from Arch Manning last year. I can't believe he's been this bad this year. And I didn't think he would just come in and light the world on fire right away. I thought there was going to be, a learning curve for him. But clearly, that curve is much steeper than I expected and a lot of other people expected. And now you have a situation where CJ Carr has been the better quarterback. I'm not one to write off Manning. I don't think he's going to suck. I think he will end up being a really good quarterback. But I've just been so impressed with CJ Carr through his first 3 games. He has already played the toughest defenses that he is going to face all season long, and he played 2 of them in his first 2 career starts. Meanwhile, Arch Manning struggled mightily against Ohio State in the season opener, which is fair, right? On the road against a really talented Ohio State defense. But Miami has a really, really good defense as well. They have proven that in their games since playing Notre Dame. And CJ Carr looked really good in that game. It's, fair to think how different is the outcome if Notre Dame had used the same game plan that they had against Texas A&M against Miami, where they weren't running so many RPO plays and they weren't just throwing horizontal passes. Like, if they came out and they ran the ball and designed runs and started taking shots downfield, maybe Notre Dame wins that game, or maybe CJ Carr throws a couple picks because he still wasn't ready to do that in that moment. We will never know. But if you look at the stats, Manning has a 61.3 completion percentage so far this year. 888 passing yards, 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, Carr has a 66% completion percentage. He's thrown for 737 passing yards in one last game, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And I said it earlier this week on the show, I think this game against Arkansas is going to be the coming out party for CJ Carr. Like, this could be a pivotal moment in his career. It is the first big game of the day in a slate that is loaded with big-time matchups across college football. But this Notre Dame-Arkansas game is going to dominate the noon window. A lot of people are going to be watching, and I think he's going to light it up, along with the Notre Dame running backs. But if he goes out there and he performs like he's been playing, if he takes his game to another level, going up against an Arkansas defense that has been pretty poor overall, I think a lot of people are going to be talking about CJ Carr after this game. And honestly, if Notre Dame were undefeated at this point in time, everyone would be talking about CJ Carr already, but the fact that they're 1-2 means that the team hasn't really been in the spotlight as much, and therefore CJ Carr has not been in the spotlight as much. But if he comes out, he's slinging it. This offense puts up 40-plus points again, and they get the win. I promise you, CJ Carr is going to get a lot of recognition. Not as much as Arch Manning, but he's going to be talked about in a much different way after week 4. Let's put it that way. All right, we got a question here from @DrewBrennan77, a regular in the Friday Mailbag. Drew asks, how can Mike Denbrock get Jaden Greathouse more involved in the offense? He's proven he makes plays when the ball's thrown his way. How about something like a jet sweep to give the defense something to think about? Well, as it pertains to jet sweeps, I don't think Mike Denbrock likes him a whole lot. I mean, they rarely run jet sweeps, right? And honestly, if they were to run a jet sweep, I'd rather them give the ball to Jeremiyah Love or Jadarian Price or even Jordan Faison, because I think they're faster than Jaden Greathouse and they're a little bit better with the ball in their hands. Now, that's not to say that Jaden Greathouse is not skilled after the catch. We all saw that play in the national championship when he spun Caleb Downs out of his shoes and scored the touchdown there that brought Notre Dame back into the game. However, I am a little bit surprised that they don't run more screens to him to get more involved, especially in that game against Miami. Like, they were running all those bubble screens to either Jordan Faison or Eli Raridon. And look, I think they're great targets for sure, but Jaden Greathouse, especially as a slot receiver, like, bubble screens are pretty much designed for a slot receiver. So I thought Jaden Greathouse would have more of an impact there. And he's only been targeted 5 times all season long. That is 5th on the team behind Jordan Faison, Malachi Fields, Eli Raridon, and Jeremiyah Love. He has caught 2 of those targets for 41 yards, including a big reception on the sideline against Texas A&M. But I don't think this is an issue with Greathouse not playing that well. It has more to do with the fact that Malachi Fields, Jordan Faison, and Eli Raridon have elevated their game to another level. For the first time in a really long time, Notre Dame has multiple weapons on the outside, and when that happens, sometimes guys go through ebbs and flows in terms of their production throughout the season, right? Just think about Jordan Faison, okay? He was a focal point of the game plan against Miami. Then he wasn't really a factor against Texas A&M as a receiver. He was an incredible blocker in the run game, but he only had 2 catches for 17 yards in that game. Then he goes out there against Purdue, is a major part of the offensive game plan, has 5 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown. So some games, the game plan is going to be different. Notre Dame also ran a lot more 12 personnel against Purdue, which means there's only going to be 2 wide receivers on the field. And when there are 2 wide receivers on the field, the slot wide receiver is off. So Jaden Greathouse just didn't play all that much against Purdue. He only had 17 snaps in the game. I fully expect he's going to be a big part of the game plan against Arkansas, because they're going to try to spread this defense out and run the ball and force that secondary to tackle. And I'm letting you know right now, that is not a strength of that unit whatsoever. And we're only 3 games into the season. This is just a slow start for him. I think things are going to turn around. It really turned around for him at the end of last season. But I've already made the prediction in the preview show this week. I think Jaden Greathouse is going to score his first touchdown of the season. I think he's going to catch at least 1, maybe even 2 slot fades. That is his best route, I think, from the slot. It's a staple to Mike Denbrock playbook. We haven't seen it a whole lot. I think we're going to see it this game, and I think Jaden Greathouse finds the end zone. All right, we've got a few more questions left, and coming up, we're going to take a peek at the playoff odds, talk some road trips, and what position group could take the biggest step forward this weekend. That's next. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Notre Dame, Jeremiyah Love and Jadarian Price both delivered for the Irish in their win over Purdue. Jeremiyah Love set a career high in rushing yards in a single game with 157, and Jadarian Price scored 4 touchdowns on 10 total touches. When the pressure was on, they came through. No hesitation, no delay. And just like the Irish running backs deliver for Notre Dame, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot, so you could take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Honestly, I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. I brought this up before. 5 Hour Energies literally carried me through some days in high school. I'd have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to make it to baseball conditioning at 5:30. Yes, baseball conditioning at 5:30 in the morning. And then I'd have to go to school. I'd have to go to class. And then after school, guess what? I had football workouts in the afternoon, so I was dead tired. But 5 Hour Energy came through for me. It can come through for you as well. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It is time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Okay, we got a few more questions left before we wrap it up and you get on with your Friday. This one comes from @JohnnyMac. What will be the most improved position group this week? All right, maybe this is just me holding out hope, and I got to admit, it's a low bar to clear. I think it's going to be the Notre Dame secondary. I think they're going to take a big step forward this weekend. I would feel even better if Leonard Moore was healthy and he was ready to go, but if Devontae Smith is back, which I think he will be, that is a big boost for the secondary, and I think they're going to take a step forward because they're going to have him back. They're also going to have Adon Schuler back for the full game, and I think Adon Schuler is going to come up with some big plays in this game. We have not really seen it a whole lot yet this season. He obviously had an opportunity against Miami at the end of the first half. He waited. CJ Daniels makes an incredible one-handed catch for the touchdown. Last year, you knew that Xavier Watts was always going to come up with the big play when the Notre Dame defense needed it. Up to this point, there hasn't been a player on this unit who has stepped up and been that kind of playmaker, that kind of difference maker in these close games. They had a chance to stop Miami. At the end of that game, they didn't. They scored the game-winning field goal. They had a chance to stop Texas A&M. They didn't. They scored the game-winning touchdown and the ensuing extra point. I have a feeling that this game against Arkansas is going to be close in the second half, but Notre Dame can pull away if someone on their defense makes a big play, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be Adon Schuler. He's going to come up with a big interception, strip sack, fumble. I don't know. I just feel good about him. I think they really missed him when he was out during the first half of the Purdue game, and then when he came back, it looked like a different defense. We already talked about it a little bit earlier. It wasn't entirely because of Adon Schuler, but man, when you've got some young guys back there in the secondary, it helps to have a veteran guy, a leader who's been there, who's done that, who's made some big-time plays. Like, this is the same guy who forced a critical fumble on ETN against Georgia in the college football playoff. We have seen him make plays before. He came up with some other big plays for the Irish last season. He needs to do it this year because no one has done it yet. I think he will. Not to mention the fact that Tay Johnson, the safety who's going to be starting next to him, he's got more game reps now. He's definitely better in coverage than Jalen Stroman. So I think he's going to be playing with more confidence as well. And then on the outside, like I said, I feel confident Christian Gray is going to get things back on track, especially if he's playing at the field. Dallas Golden did give up a touchdown against Purdue late in the game, but he also had a really incredible interception. And honestly, on that touchdown, it looked like a safety was supposed to help him over the top. It didn't happen. Great throw, great catch. It happens. But I'm really excited about Dallas Golden's future. So this secondary, are they going to give up some big plays? Yes. Are they going to give up some passing yards to Taylor Green? Yes. Are they going to give up a lot of points? Probably. But they have talented players back there, and I think they're going to show up in big moments, and that's going to be the difference in this game. So I'm going to take the Notre Dame secondary. All right, we got @Mike Towery. He asked a question here. Did you notice that Notre Dame is still in the top 12 of teams with the best odds to win the national championship on FanDuel? As a matter of fact, I did notice that, Micah. And look, as I've said before, I don't want to talk too much about the playoffs now because this team is a long way away from looking like a group capable of doing anything in the playoffs. And I had the same approach last year. After they beat Louisville, I was like, look, it's a great win. Ranked win, They're starting to get things back on track. Still had a lot to fix, but I was like, I'm not ready to talk about the playoffs. I was not really prepared to talk about Notre Dame as a playoff team until after they just housed Navy. I was like, okay, this team might have something here, right? But as it pertains to where Notre Dame stands in the betting odds, it's a good reminder that for as down as we are about this group through 3 games, a lot of other teams are dealing with problems themselves. And also a lot of other people who care about the sport who are really smart, like they look at this Notre Dame team and they're still optimistic. Could they end up being wrong? Absolutely. But we focus everything through a Notre Dame lens, right? We're fans. We're listening to this podcast. We're watching this podcast. So we only think about the problems that this team is dealing with, and it sort of blinds us to the fact that other teams have issues too. As a matter of fact, some teams have a lot of issues, like Arkansas. They're a great example. Like, yeah, the Notre Dame defense has been terrible through 3 games, but so has Arkansas's defense. Not to mention the fact that Bobby Petrino, their offensive coordinator, is actively trying to usurp the head coach, Sam Pittman, during the middle of the season, and you've got other assistants on Arkansas who are asking around about their own job security and their futures. Plus, the entire Arkansas fan base wants Sam Pittman gone. So yeah, things are dysfunctional at Notre Dame, but they're far more dysfunctional at Arkansas. So this could be a shootout and Arkansas could win this game. But when we're talking about culture and defense and things that really matter here in terms of the outcome of this game, like Notre Dame is still in a pretty good position. They've got some really talented players that we have seen perform at a high level in college football. So as dire as things might feel for Notre Dame today, it seems like Arkansas is in a much worse place. We'll see how that affects the game on Saturday. And if Notre Dame is able to win against Arkansas, they'll be 2-2. And they'll have a couple games coming up on at home against Boise State and NC State. They should be able to win both those games. And then they'll have USC coming to town. And that is going to be a big game at night, South Bend. If things go the way I think they're going to go, USC could be undefeated in that game. They've got to play Illinois, who just got slaughtered by Indiana. And they've also got to play Michigan, who really struggles to put up any points. But there is a chance where USC could come into that game undefeated, ranked pretty high, top 15, maybe even top 10. And if Notre Dame is 4-2 going into that game and they get a win over the Trojans, they are going to be right back in the mix. And based on what I've seen from this offense and what I think CJ Carr can become by the end of this year, like that could be a really scary team. Again, we're looking way ahead of ourselves, and I promised I wouldn't do it, and guess what? I ended up doing it, but it's not that shocking to me that Notre Dame is 12th in the odds to win the national championship, because who's the best team in college football right now? Like if I gave you $1,000 and I said, you have to put this on one team to win the national championship this year, who would you put it on? I have no idea, right? We have true parity in college football for the first time in a long time. So it's not a shock to me that people have not completely counted out Notre Dame, and they still got a chance. Long way to go, but we're saying there's a chance. All right, this last one here, my favorite one of the day by far. This one comes from @IrishChris11. Is Luke Smith a trust fund baby? How does he go to every road game? IrishChris11, this is absolutely hilarious, but no. Luke Smith is not a trust fund baby. And no, he's also not anti-booze in the stadium, despite how some people interpreted his comments on Tuesday's show. If you've been watching or listening to this show for a long time, you know that we have been advocating for alcohol sales in the stadium for 5 years now, dating back to the Sons of Saturday days, which shout out to IrishChris11. I looked back through some of the messages. I realized that you have been following along since the Sons of Saturday days. That is a true diehard fan. So salute to you. I love the question. But getting back to Luke here and his trips to away games, the man is just committed. He famously said, if Notre Dame plays in Afghanistan, I'll be there. He's built different, folks. That's why we have him on the show every week. We get his boots on the ground report. Somehow he's like addicted to having the most absurd interactions with fans, whether it be Notre Dame fans or opposing fans in every single game. And he's got a platform to share it all, and the people love it. So I think it's great. I think Luke has a knack for finding cheap, efficient ways to make these trips, and he's just committed. But I have to say, we've got to speak with our PR department here. We got to work on Luke's perception a little bit, because these accusations are getting out of control. He's like the opposite of a trust fund kid, and he is absolutely not anti-booze in the stadium. I'm telling you, Luke enjoys a nice cold adult beverage or two. So I can't believe I'm even being asked that, but hey, something we're going to work on going forward. I cannot wait to hear Luke's thoughts about this question when he's back on the show on Tuesday for our final thoughts segment about the Arkansas game. But that's a long way away, right? We have a lot more to talk about in between now and then, but that is going to do it for today's mailbag. Thank you so much for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day, and thank you for tuning in all week long. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Don't forget to like, rate, and review the show. I'm going to be back here tomorrow with an instant reaction episode right after the game, so stay tuned for that. Until then, enjoy the weekend and go Irish.